Marty, I appreciate that. Go Dogs! Now, how did we get this far in this program without somebody saying go Dogs? Crying out loud, where are we, folks? Let's get real here. It's the start of the kickoff of the football season this weekend. That's an exciting time. It's the start of the kickoff of the United Way campaign, and that's equally as an exciting time to me. Now, the kickoff of the college football season in my household means a little bit of a fight. I have a daughter, a 23-year-old daughter, who several years ago broke my heart, came to me, said, "Dad, I'm going to go to the University of Alabama." And yeah, I felt the same way. And so there are huge fights in our family. But I will tell you, there are dogs everywhere and good dogs everywhere that will always reach out and help a fellow Bulldog. And that was the case in this situation when a gentleman named Kevin Allman, who's the Associate Athletic Director at the University of Alabama, to Malmore, and Kevin had been the trainer on Georgia's 1980 National Championship football team. And Kevin called me, he says, "Chuck," he said, "I don't want you to worry about Christina, so I'm going to take total care of her." He says, "You don't have to worry about a thing, I'm going to look after her." Well, you know, for a dad and his only daughter, that made me feel pretty darn good. And I thought, well, this is terrific. And sure enough, Christina goes over to orientation before the start of her freshman year and finds out all the classes she's going to have to take her first semester. And Kevin calls her and says, "Christina, bring your classes over here to my office." So she goes over to his office. He says, "Let me see the classes you got to take this first semester." And she hands them to him, and he pulls them up on his computer, picks up the phone on his desk, calls downstairs, and calls the guy upstairs to his office that registers all the athletes at the University of Alabama. And he's got those classes on his computer, and he says, "What about this course? What does she need right here?" He goes, "Put her right there. Put her in that class right there." He goes, "Well, what about this class?" He goes, "You want this guy right here." And so he registered her for her first semester at Alabama. Well, about 6 weeks in, one day I get a call from Christina. She says, "Dad," she says, "I just wrote the worst paper I've ever written in my life. I got a B." I said, "Well, sweetheart," I said, that's very good." She says, "Yeah," she says, "I think I'm in class with a lot of football players." And I said, "What makes you think that?" And she says, "Well, they're real big and they don't have any books." So when you look at those polls and you see where Alabama is in the polls, now you know why. Now you understand why. So the kickoff to the football season is important in my house, but the kickoff to United Way in this campaign is important to me and should be important to everybody in this room. These are tough times that we're going through. I don't think I need to tell anybody here. And as Southerners, and particularly as Athenians, and as folks in this region, you know what we do and what we're proud of? We look after each other. We take care of each other. And this is your chance to step forward and do that, to look after your neighbor. And you know, there are people that you probably pass every day that need help right now. Some that perhaps could have been sitting where we're sitting this morning a few years ago that didn't realize that they would ever be in the position that they'd need the help that they need today. And this is what United Way does. And this is why we're all here this morning. And this is why when you leave here today, I want you to think about the people that you see every day, that you pass on the street. Many of you may not know the kind of help they need or the situations they're in. And this is your chance, your opportunity to do something. Look, we've got a goal of over $2.3 million. And that's a big number. But you know what? We got a plan to get there. And having a plan is important. I'll tell you a quick story. Back in 2001, Mark Rick comes here as head football coach. And I'd known Mark since he was a senior in high school at Boca Raton High. And I was working in Miami, as Marty mentioned. And then he went to the University of Miami. So I'd known Mark a long, long time. So he comes to the University of Georgia, my alma mater, and I'm proud that he's going to be there and be the head football coach. And so the first couple of games are in Athens, and then we're going on the road for the first time. First road game under Mark Rick. And where are we going? We're going to a place where Georgia hadn't won in 20 years. We're going to Knoxville, going to play the Vols. And you know, Lord knows, nobody looks good in orange. And here we are, we're going up there, and going up there is 18-point underdogs to take on Tennessee. And so, look, I'm not expecting a great outcome for Georgia and for my good friend, Coach Rick, to, in his rookie season as a head coach. But I tell you, look, I'm going to come over on Friday before we leave, and we'll go have lunch before we get on the buses to head to the airport to fly up to Knoxville. He says, fine. So I meet him in his office, and we hang out in his office for a little bit. And he says, well, let's head out. And I said, okay. And we get up, we walk out of the office, and he closes the door, locks the door, and we start down the hallway. at the Buttsmere Center. We're walking down the hallway, and suddenly he just stops, and his shoulders droop. And I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I left the game plan in the office." And I thought, rookie. You know. And I looked and I said, "Plan? We got a plan? Oh, this is terrific. We got a plan. Maybe we won't get our butts kicked by 20 tomorrow. We got a plan. How wonderful is this?" Well, he goes back in the office. He gets the game plan. And we go on and we fly to Knoxville. I don't see him anymore that night. I don't see him the next morning. Game kicks off. Tennessee takes a huge lead. But Georgia hangs tough. And in the fourth quarter, Georgia gets a lead in the football game. But wouldn't you know it, with less than 2 minutes to play, Tennessee hits a little swing pass. They go the distance. And suddenly order is restored in the land of the orange. All the people are cheering because once again, Tennessee has the lead. And it appears that Tennessee's won the football game. But suddenly, Georgia gets the football back. Not much time left, about a minute and a half. David Green comes out on the field. And down the field comes Georgia. Boom, 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 boom. Till finally, with just a few seconds left, David Green dumps the ball right over the middle to Veron Haynes. Touchdown. Georgia wins. Larry Munson, hobnail boot, just crushed their face. It is a terrific moment for Georgia football. It's a terrific moment for all of us who love the red and black. But more importantly to me, it was a terrific moment for a rookie head coach whom I'd known since he was a senior in high school. And I'm happy for him. I'm excited for him. So he runs out in the field to shake hands with Phil Fulmer. And as he's coming off the field, I don't want to talk. I just step over just to put out my hand, just to shake his hand, because I'm happy for him. I'm excited for him. As I put out my hand, he grabs my hand, he cups me around the neck, pulls me down, and he goes, "We had a plan." He remembered. He did have a plan. And we've got a plan too, and that plan includes all of you. We need your help to reach our goal of 2.3 million. And there are a number of ways you can do it. The way I'd suggest you do it is through the payroll savings plan. You get an opportunity to have it deducted right from your paycheck. And you know what? Here's what I want to make clear to you. It's not how much money you give, it's the consistency. Because here's some of the things that you can do. Just if you can give $1 a week, just $1 a week now. Here's what happens. That'll support 5 youth in a summer program. Just $1 a week. $5 a week, USDA nutritional snacks for a youth for a full year. That's just for that's a trip to Starbucks, folks. That's $5 a week. $10 a week, you get a year's worth of meals for a child at a child care center. That's $10 a week. And if you do it through your payroll deduction, I like to tell the story about the meaning of consistency and the consistency of giving and doing. My dad passed away in 1998, lived to be 91 years old, came through the Depression, was a product of the Depression. And I guess it was like 94, 95. He calls me, says, "I need you to come over to the house." He says, "I want to go over everything with you so that when I die," he says, "that you'll know where everything is and how to take care of your mom and where I have things, how I have things set up." And I thought, okay, fine. So I took a day off from work and I go over and I sit down at the kitchen table with him and we're going over everything and he's showing me what this and this and this and what this is for and this is for. And I'm going through everything and I come to a passbook savings account. And I opened it up and it had like $2,600 and something in it. And the ironic part was, the only reason it had $2,600 and something, he had just paid cash for a new Buick. Just bought himself a new Buick and paid cash out of that account. And I said, "Dad," I said, what's this passbook say? What's this 26? I understand what everything else is for. What's this? And he says, "Well," he says, "every morning when I wake up," he says, "first thing I do," he says, "I put on my pants. And then he says, I come in here," and he says, "that hutch right there," he says, "reach up there in that top drawer." I reached up and I opened up the hutch. He says, "reach in there." And I reached in there, I pulled out a wad of cash, dollar bills. And he says, "How many dollar bills?" I counted them out. I said, 17. He says, "What's today's date?" I said, "Well, it's May 17th. He says, "Well, every morning," he says, "I come in there," and he says, "I put $1 up there in the top drawer of that hutch." And he said, "At the end of the month," he says, "I take either $30 or $31 down to the bank, and I put it in this account." And he just paid cash for a new Buick and still had $2,600 in that account. And that's just doing that at $1 a day. Just $1 a day. So it's not how much you give or how you do it, it's the consistency of giving. And when you give to the United Way, you're helping 29 different agencies here in 9 different counties, doing so much to help your fellow neighbors. And the money, you know, we were talking about how the money stays here, and Marty was mentioning it stays here. I think you saw it in the video, and how important that is. I got to tell you a quick story. When while I was working at WSB, I'm friends with a comic that y'all know, Jeff Foxworthy. And out at his house one day, we're just talking about what he did for a living, and then just being able to earn a living telling jokes. And he was telling me about, he says, you know, he said, it really is a pretty good gig. And he says, it's been very lucrative to my family, and blessed, the Lord's blessed me in a lot of ways. I've been able to do a lot of great things. And he said, but I just finished doing a show with Kicks and Dunn up in Virginia. And he said, they were half the show, and I was half the show. He said, so we were splitting the money. And he said, so one morning, he says, we're up there, and he said, I'm having breakfast with Ronnie Dunn. He says, Ronnie looks over at me, he says, Fox, now, he says, now keep in mind, now Kicks and Dunn, they had the backup singers, the backup band, and the light show, and the whole thing. He says, Ronnie Dunn, he says, now Fox, he says, now what do you need for your part of the program? And he says, I looked at him and said, well, I need a microphone, a stool, and a glass of water to be nice. And he says, Ronnie Dunn looked at him for a second and says, oh, I get it. You get to keep all the money. And that was exactly the case. Foxworthy was keeping all the money. They were having to share it. We don't have to share it. We can keep that money that you give. We can keep it right here. We can help our fellow neighbors right here in this community. So I'm asking you, please, as we head through this football season, as we kick off the college football season, think about what you can do with United Way. Think about how you can contribute. And again, it's not the amount of money you give, but the consistency with which you give it. And I'm asking you to please keep that in mind. We can do so much for each other. I thank you for letting me be the honorary chair for this great organization. I thank you for letting me come here this morning and share breakfast with you. And again, before I leave here, let me just say one thing. Go Dogs!